Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Trails of Cold Steel Northern War Season 1, Episode 9. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, we are picking up in the aftermath of last episode. Clark is still holding on enough. His final message is being like, oh, I was so close to basically ruling everything. And obviously for Rogan, it's like, there you go. There's your quote unquote hero. That's what this has all been about. He even acknowledges later on, it's like, yeah, at one point in time, he legitimately did want to do the right thing and had plans of uniting all of Zemuria. But that's the problem with power. Absolute power ends up corrupting absolutely. And eventually those desires got twisted and contorted. And it was no longer about doing what was right and trying to unify Zemuria. It was about unifying Zemuria under his rule. So that's where we kind of get. But yeah, his final words to Lavi were, hey, you can't escape the curse of being a hero, like the label of hero. Once again, those deep parallels, like that ends up being something that kind of, you get buried underneath that moniker, though, that word. And obviously we saw what it did to him, how it changed him and how it shaped him into who he is. And obviously Lavi trying to do good with that title. It is that thing. And I think that's interesting because I'm about finished with my 5th playthrough of Cold Steel 2. There's that line from Oliver to Reen from Alphen out, in the Reverie corridor, where it was basically like, right, there are no heroes. At the end of the day, everyone is just human trying to do the best that they can. I'm super paraphrasing, but that's kind of it. Like, there is no real heroes. There's just people trying to do what they believe is right. It's like, people doubt themselves. They second guess themselves, not really sure about what they're doing. I mean, and obviously we see that with Lavi. She thought she was doing the right thing and she's still trying to do the right thing. That ends up kind of being a conversation between her and Tally a little bit this episode. So, and even Rogan, he does believe he's doing what's best for his country. He's like, I know who Clark is. No one else saw Clark for who he really was. I did. And I'm going to take the reins of this because I'm going to do what I can to protect my country. That's all this is about. People all trying to do what they believe is right. Even as we know why Osborn did what he did. Everything was because he ended up shouldering a lot of stuff on his own, and he did a lot of terrible things along the way, but it's for the greater good. It's heavily implied Ouroboros is Grandmaster that she's doing the exact same thing. Some terrible stuff to prepare for what's coming in the next few years, her Grand Orpheus final plan and everything. I mean, well, we don't know if that's kind of hers, fully hers, or that's something that she adopted from someone else or something, tension and all that aside. But the timing of that's so interesting because that letter from Oliver in Cold Steel 2's epilogue just really resonates even more in this case too. I mean, that once again, that term hero resonates so interestingly because all of our heroes, whether it's the Liberal squad, whether it's the Crossbell squad, whether it's the Erebonian squad, none of them set out to be heroes. They were in the circumstances that made, don't forget this whole entire series, the main overarching series is The Legend of Heroes, and then underneath that is the overarching series, the Trails game. So it's just, and it's like, right, they didn't set out to be heroes. They weren't destined to be heroes. It's just they wanted to do what was right. They were in positions to do it, and that's what they did. So, either way, Rogan makes it like, oh yeah, I'm the one that killed Glark, because that way you tell that fiction, now it's going to spread like truth, because everyone figured he was going to go after and kill Glark anyway, and it's like, right, might as well lean into it, and this way it becomes the reality, plus it gets people underneath him even more. If you're like, yeah, someone else killed him, it's like, wait, what? Who did? At this point, he needs everyone rallied underneath him, just like Glark did. So it's got to, it's like, right. Because even later on, one of the other guys, it's like, yeah, now that Glark is gone, the two factions that basically were united under him because of Vlad's death ended up, because of Vlad and the whole Colonel Valentine situation, it led to everyone falling underneath Glark. But now it's like, yeah, those two factions are kind of divided yet again, because now there are those who are siding with Rogan and there are those who are not especially because he ended up finding the device Glark has that controls the archaisms, and it's like, right, here you are, like, are you trying not to go to hell unarmed? So, but I love that conversation he has with Jaina, who just, like, mysteriously pops up. It's like, she refers to herself, and even Tally later on is like, oh, we're neutral parties and all this. It's like, neutral my ass. Like, obviously you have your own plans. I'm still leaning towards, like, the only reason why there'd be this neutrality, like, that you want to basically see how everything plays out, you're stoking the flames on every front, is because you've got to be part of Ouroboros, or, like, this is your audition for Ouroboros, or maybe you are already more, I mean, because it makes sense, because it's like, we know for a fact, like, every arc has at least one Ouroboros member, like, either hidden amongst you, or you might see someone rise to those ranks, you know, whether it's like a Ren, or the Faceless, or Sharon, or, because there was none, like, hidden in the Crossbell arc. We saw, eventually, Belle and Shirley become Ouroboros members, but I'm trying to think, I don't think there was anyone hidden, necessarily speaking, like Ouroboros, not that I can think of off the top of my head. Maybe if I took more time I could think of, but I know the other arcs, yes, and I'm sure there's going to be a hidden Ouroboros member, most likely a hidden Grossritter member in, like, the Calvert arc. But tangents and all that, my point is just, like, that's been my thought process, and even her being like, oh, here you are, here you are, Rogan, drinking to the person you supposedly killed, and it's like, it still hits Rogan, because, like, he didn't like Glark, everything that Glark represented. It's like, right, now, how are you feeling in the afterlife now? Like, you were finally able to let go of all of that, and he's drinking, and it's like, yeah, it's not a drink of victory or anything. Like, he is sad, because this was one of this nation's heroes, and he believed at one point in time, like, right, you did want to do good, but you got lost along the way, and for him, it's like, I won't be in that same regard. It's like, who's to say you won't? Going full speed ahead like you are. But, once again, Jaina being like, yeah, I'm a neutral party watching all this go down. Lavi ended up managing to escape, but I mean, that's because, like, Rogan wasn't even really trying. It's like, no, go ahead and go. So she's on her own trying to stop all of this, especially because when the time comes, obviously, Rogan has all the government officials, like, locked up, like last episode, but they're kind of like, at least one of them is having a mental breakdown, because finding out that it's like, oh, Glark is dead. It's like, oh yeah, this was as far as he was meant to go, like, because they put all their backing, they put everything into backing Glark, and it kind of blew up in their faces. It's actually very reminiscent of the Civil War situation, the October War situation in Erebonia. A lot of the nobles kind of ended up getting screwed over because they backed Duke Cayenne, and in some cases backed Duke Alberea, and that super blew up in their faces. So it's kind of reminiscent of that a little bit. It's like, oh, I wasn't expecting the other side to win, and now, oh crap, we're screwed. Like I said, that one government member, like, seemed like he was legitimately having a breakdown. The other guy was too. He's like, no, there's no way Clark is dead. Clark is going to live forever. It's because it's like, because understandable, he is their hope, because he is the only surviving hero from that original era. So there was so much glamour, and there was so much shining light behind that in their eyes. And now that he's going, it's like, oh, we're doomed, we're screwed. Like, Glark is he's supposed to be our hero, he's supposed to be our symbol. Even the other guy who's against Rogan is like, right, the only play we have is getting Lavi as the grandchild of a hero. She's like the only embodiment left of that old regime of heroes, you know, with, like, you know, her grandfather Vlad is like, she's the only one left, so she could still be a piece that they could use in the grand scheme of things. That's what she was for Glark, and she's going to be for those trying to go against Rogan. So, and obviously Rogan's the one who turns down Erebonia's offer of, like, yeah, we're here's your the reparations you're supposed to pay us because of the Celtic situation, which we got Aurelia and Wallace. You know, it's like, okay, like, so what do we do? And it's like, oh, this is all going according to plan. Now, obviously, they kept that vague enough, but I'm like, whose plan? Has Muse already contacted you? Well, Mildine at this point, because she's not Muse yet. Has she already contacted you about this? Because we know Aurelia was like, oh yeah, that was all, like, she's the one that told them about... Well, she knew about the Civil War coming. Obviously, she didn't know about the more mystical, supernatural elements like the Divine Knights. You can't account for that, no matter how smart you are. Without some like full blown clairvoyance, like a witch, you wouldn't be able to see that coming. But she knew the Civil War was coming, and she knew the whole Northern War thing was going to happen too. So she positioned Aurelia and Wallace, but I don't know if she got to them yet. But it's like, yeah, it's going according to plan. It could be kept vague because it's meant to represent both. Yes, it's going according to Osborn's plan, but it's also going exactly the way Muse said. And maybe for Aurelia, this might be like, huh. I mean, because she already knew Mildine, but it's like, now it's like okay, Lady Mildine's even more fortuitous than I thought. Like, about, fortuitous isn't the right word. Like, her insight is crazy. Essentially, it's crazy good. But yeah, it's like, right, we are playing the waiting game because all the Empire needs to do is just wait it out to be like, oh, we tried all we could and negotiations broke down and we had no choice but to go after Northumbria because that way no one else will, because there was no like, because that was a whole point brought up like a couple episodes ago or something like that, was like, right, is no one going to help us with this Empire situation? Even the city of Arteria is just sitting on the sidelines. But it's just because like now it's like the continent can't really get involved because now it looks like, hey, you're justified because, hey, you tried all you could, even though it's like, right, the plan was always, no matter what you did, like they knew with the circumstances being what they were, it's like, oh, we can take advantage of it. It's most likely a situation of like, yeah, we accounted for it. Well, like, we knew, like, with stuff going down in Northumbria the way it is, of course they were going to always deny. Might even kind of nudge things in a certain direction so that they would deny. And with that, we'll be able to justify us, going after Northumbria and annexing it. So, there's also Marty fishing, which I love that we have like our like main characters that love to fish. And once again, every group's got that main fisher, whether it's Estelle, whether it's Lloyd, whether it's, like cross-spell Lloyd, not the TO, part of the Fisherman's Guild Lloyd, but the other, well, that Lloyd had ties to the Fisherman's Guild, the cross-spell main hero Lloyd Bannings, but Reen and but yeah, like Marty's a big fisher, and I do like that comes up with the conversation with Altina. It's like, no, he likes to fish too, because he's like, oh, what's that hero's like? And she, of course, Altina's besmirching Reen's good name, being like, yeah, he's kind of it's like that dry wit of hers, just the way she kind of like badmouths him when he's not around. It's like, yeah, he's kind of like not respectable. And it's like, oh, really? It's like, do you really want to have a guy like that as your hero? But for Altina, it's like, I don't know. The fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, he seems unhappy with that position. And she has that perspective, considering, like, right, she doesn't know Reen that well at this point in time, but she knew him through the events of the war and the times they worked together in between 2 and 3. Well, in between, like, the finale of 2. By finale, I just mean, like, the final chapter, and not including the epilogue. Obviously, a little bit of the epilogue, just because of like the divertisement section, they were working together in Crossbell, and obviously they worked together during this Northern War situation as well. I'm curious, like, I wonder what's the Northern War, their last operation that they worked together before they met up at the branch campus. I'm curious. They never go into specifics when the last time they actually worked together was. Either way, it gave Marty kind of a different perspective on Reen, because I think I wonder, does he even know that Reen had ties to the circumstance that he was connected to? It's like, do you know that Reen was the one who took down, like, him and his class are the ones who took down Duke Alberea, who ordered you to burn and raze Celtic to the ground? I wonder, does he know that? Once again, he probably doesn't even know, like, oh, Reen has ties to an old ally of yours, Sarah Valentine, so, like, I wonder how much he knows on that front. But, yeah, he gets the word about what Rogan did, because Lecter called him up, was like, yeah, this is kind of going down, and it's like, right, Glark is dead, it was Rogan, wasn't it? So, I'm sure Marty's going to do everything he can to kind of help prevent things. He might be one of the reasons why things play out the way they do in the grand scheme of the things when it comes to the Northern War. Like, he probably has his own role to play in all of that. Some other surprises was, what was home dude's name? Ivano, when he was like, "Oh, hey, Lavi, yeah, I've got connections amongst people. You know, I'm very connected, even to people amongst Rogan's group. So that's why I haven't gotten captured." And he was like, "Oh yeah, I showed my face and stuff like that." She's like, "Your face?" And he's like, "Yeah, like, you know, it's like I've been building up stuff for like the past couple years." I was like, "Are we gonna find out you're someone significant, like you're in disguise or something like that?" I was like, no, I don't think so. I thought that's what the reveal was going to be, but he's like, "Oh, if I help you out, Lavi, like you being the granddaughter of like one of the heroes, you could get me a promotion and just make sure I'm a higher position than my buddy. That way I can kind of lord it over him, like, oh, I'm finally higher than you and stuff like that." So, because he was even saying like some of the people that are on the elite squad, he's like, "Yeah, I trained them, so I've got, you know, I'm pretty well connected." So he ends up leading Lavi in, and it's like, "Hey, you help me out, I will give you that promotion thing." He's like, "Really, you'll do it?" And I love the turning to the camera, sticking out her tongue. It's like, nah, sorry, but I don't want to think about it. It's like, poor guy. But Lavi snuck in dressed as a maid, which is funny. Before, a certain other character dressed up like a butler before doing something pretty bombastic, you know. So it's interesting to think about. But she ends up running into Tally, and Tally's like, "Right, I'm not obligated to help you, nor am I obligated to tell Rogan and his people that you're here, just because it's like I'm a neutral party in all this." And obviously Tally's he's like, "You trying to do this on your own?" It's like, what are you trying to gain from this? Are you acting upon this as, you know, Vlad's granddaughter? Like, once again, she's trying to make the best of, yes, that title is being lorded over her head, but she's, much like Green, is trying to make the best of it. It's like, I just want to protect my country, you know? And I think Tally did all this because he was frustrated with his own weakness and not being able to do anything. I think there's almost like a parallel you can make to Cedric. His own weakness kind of allowed him to kind of fall prey to the situation with Osborn and Ishmelga. But, when it's all said and done, like, it's like, oh, was this a trap? It's like, once again, he probably pointed you in the right direction, but Tally was probably not obligated to tell you, like, yeah, it's probably booby trapped or something like that. The guards are after her. She's back in the sewers, and Tally's there, and he pulls the trigger on her. He didn't actually shoot her. Maybe he did to make it look real, but I'm pretty sure he probably just shot in the general direction and made her fall into the water. It's like, right, that way they stop looking for you because they think you're dead. And like, yep, she's wounded or dead, so you can stop looking for her now. So I'm sure, because Tally still, either because he does still care about her despite his new quote-unquote neutrality, or this is still all part of the plan too, because Jaina has her, because the fact is that Tally's just so like stoic in this moment makes me go like, I think he's having to bury all of his emotions. Now, whether Jaina actually helped him with that, like with like a hypnosis thing, or whether he's just doing that on purpose just to be, not to be driven by his feelings, even though they're still there no matter how deep he tries to bury them. So we'll ultimately have to wait to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. It's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.